Maharaj, I would like to introduce you. Although there is, everyone knows you, but still it is a privilege to glorify your activities. Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to evening session of ISKCON Sannyas College. And today it is a privilege and honor to have His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj with us. Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj was born in Tashkent, former Soviet Union. He took to spiritual life in 1980. During a very difficult time during the communist era, there was a time when Maharaj actually joined the spiritual life. He travels widely throughout the Russia, sharing Krishna consciousness. Since 1997, he has acted as a member of ISKCON's governing body commission, and since 2005, he has served as one of the spiritual masters of ISKCON. In 2017, he retired from his managerial position to devote himself fully to the studies and teaching others. Maharaj also is a neighbor of our Bhagavad Mahavidyalaya, and we are fortunate enough to receive his regular association. So we want to welcome Maharaj by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Welcome, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Sundar Prabhu. Thank you very much to all the sannyas candidates. It's a pleasure to see all of you. It's only Indian body candidates and Russian body candidates. I can relate to it.
Maharaj, please forgive me. Radharasila, please turn on the recordings. Please. And recordings to be in the cloud.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhirayat Nashtaprayashvavadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki Yantah Pravishya Mama Vachim Imam Prasuptam Sanjivayata Kila Shakti Daraksvadamna Anyamscha Hasta Charana Shravanat Vagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam. Okay, so dear devotees of Sannyas College and others, I was asked to give a short seminar which will consist of 2 parts. Today and on Saturday we will continue, which was entitled by the Shastrik Committee of Sannyas College as different types of devotion. And specifically the task in front of me is to explain what Srila Jiva Goswami says about this in Bhakti Sandarbha and what is being described by Lord Kapila Dev in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically in 27th, 28th and 29th chapter. It's a very big topic and very important topic. Obviously, I will not be able to cover all the details of this topic because basically the whole Bhakti Sandarbha, the biggest part of Bhakti Sandarbha, which is the biggest Sandarbha out of all 6, is devoted to classification of different kinds of bhakti. Srila Jiva Goswami literally mentions dozens and dozens of different types of bhakti. But all this with exclusive goal to help us understand what is pure bhakti. We have to know all kinds of impurities to understand what is pure, unadulterated bhakti, and to be able to distinguish between these two, between different kind of mixed bhakti and the pure bhakti. Because oftentimes in this world we have so many different, things which we call bhakti. Sometimes we call bhakti, sometimes other people call bhakti. Sometimes people don't call it bhakti, but there is some bhakti element in there. So the greatest achievement and the greatest contribution of Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas is this minute analysis of the impurities within bhakti. Because bhakti is everywhere. Whatever Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is bold enough to say that, without bhakti you cannot do anything. Anything will not be successful, especially in the spiritual life, if there is not an element of bhakti in it. We can see the element of bhakti in all kinds of religions, including Buddhism. Nominally, Buddhists don't believe in God, but there is a very strong element of bhakti in Buddhism. They do arati, they do puja, they do all kinds of things. They even do kirtan. They chant mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, and all kinds of stuff is there. So bhakti, there is nothing special about bhakti in one sense, because bhakti is everywhere. Bhakti is as all-pervading as the Lord himself. So because the Lord is everywhere, people, they do have some sort of devotion, some sort of attachment. That's attachment or devotion or attraction is called bhakti. But the greatest contribution of Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas is that they minutely distinguished all kinds of mixed bhaktis from pure bhakti. And they showed how powerful pure bhakti is, and how rare it is, and how difficult it is to achieve, and how prone we are to pause something else for bhakti, to somehow or other to mix pure bhakti with something else. So that's the greatest contribution, and therefore in one sense this consideration, this vichar about what is pure bhakti and what are the other types of bhakti, many varieties of bhakti, is probably the most important topic for our consideration of all other kinds of topics. We can speak about different philosophical nuances and details, but ultimately what we have to understand, what is pure bhakti, and try to practice pure bhakti and try to help others to practice pure bhakti. Because first of all, we have to understand that we ourselves prone to practice impure bhakti, to bring in all kinds of mixtures. And second of all, we definitely should be able to distinguish and to see how other people are mixing bhakti with something else, cooking bhakti with all kinds of different spices, thinking that by adding little chili or cumin seeds or whatever they will make bhakti more tasteful and more pleasant. So that's the topic which we are going to discuss, and I will read first the verse and purport from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, from the 29th chapter, where Kapila Dev specifically says that bhakti is of many types. It's verse number 7 from the 29th chapter of the third canto, where Kapila Dev says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Bhakti Yogo Bahu vidhaha. There are many types of bhakti yoga. Margair bhamini bhavyate. And there are many different paths. Margair bhamini bhavyate. Svabhava guna margina pumsam bhava vidhiyate. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Kapila, the personality of Godhead, replied, O noble lady, there are multifarious paths of devotional service in terms of different qualities of the executor. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness is one, because in pure devotional service there is no demand from the devotee to be fulfilled by the Lord. But generally people take to devotional service with a purpose. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, people who are not purified take to devotional service with 4 purposes. A person who is distressed because of material conditions becomes a devotee of the Lord and approaches the Lord for mitigation of his distress. A person in need of money approaches the Lord to ask for some improvement of his monetary condition. Others who are not in distress or in need of monetary assistance but are seeking knowledge in order to understand the absolute truth also take to devotional service, and they inquire into the nature of the Supreme Lord. This is very nicely described in Bhagavad Gita 7:16. Actually, the path of devotional service is one, without a second, but according to the devotee's condition, devotional service appears in multifarious varieties, as will be nicely explained in the following verses. So the most important point of this purport is that real devotional service is one. It's pure devotional service. Everything else is not really devotional service. It's some mixture. The mixtures may be less or more, but pure devotional service is one. And to be able to distinguish it from the mixed forms of devotee, we have to really apply our intelligence. It's like gold. Pure gold is one, but then there are so many different varieties of gold. Or if you ever been on the beach in Jagannath Puri, there are some sellers, and they will sell to you different stones. And they will come and say, we have a very special diamond for you. And they will tell you, this is real diamond, just try to smash it, and it will, scratch the glass and everything, and the huge diamonds there. Unfortunately, it's not diamond, but they will try to sell it as a diamond. In the same way, in this material world, we have so many different sellers of bhakti, including ourselves. And we really have to understand what do we sell to people and what we are buying when we listen to different people. And we have to be very careful. And therefore, this subject matter is not only important for us as a guides to other people, but it's also important for us as a practicing devotees who may not be 100%, 100% pure, and therefore our mixed motivation will also influence our consciousness, as Prabhupada says. Why bhakti has so many varieties? Because of the consciousness of the practitioner. So everyone has specific type of bhakti. Already we can see there is Russian bhakti, there is Indian bhakti, there is Chinese bhakti, there is Bangladeshi bhakti. All kinds of bhaktis are already there. So, and everyone thinks that Russian bhakti is the best bhakti. Chinese bhakti is by far better. This is all the considerations. So let's start. I will mostly base my talk on Bhakti Sandarbha, and not the whole Bhakti Sandarbha, because there are so many different sections in Bhakti Sandarbha which deals with this subject matter, but with the section towards the end of Bhakti Sandarbha, Anuchedas 217 to 234. It's 18 Anuchedas, 18 chapters of Bhakti Sandarbha, which directly precede the description of the practice of bhakti. It's very interesting because before Bhakti Sandarbha is supposed to describe the process of bhakti, but before taking to the process of bhakti, Jiva Goswami speaks so many chapters, hundreds of chapters, to describe something else. And only at the very end he starts saying about Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and everything else. Again, because it's very important to be rightly tuned in what is real bhakti. And because it's very easy. Shravanam is easy, Kirtanam is easy, but whether it's bhakti or not remains to be seen. So, therefore, he's not in a rush to say, do this, do this, do this. First of all, he wants to establish us firmly in a proper consciousness towards what we are doing, to really help us to understand with which consciousness we should perform these practices. Then only he will describe the practices. The practice is simple. To purify the consciousness in a proper way, to perform these practices, that's difficult. Therefore, Prabhupada says, bhakti is very simple. And then he writes, many, many volumes to explain what is bhakti. It's so simple, and then you need 50 different volumes to explain this simple process. So, bhakti is simple in one sense. It's simple in a practical execution. But it's not simple when we're talking about proper execution of bhakti. Proper execution of bhakti is rare, and it's not that simple. So we should not be deceived by the seeming apparent simplicity of the techniques of bhakti. Techniques are simple. Consciousness, to tune in consciousness properly, is difficult. So, first of all, before Srila Jiva Goswami says very interesting thing. He takes the definition in Anucheda 216. He takes the definition of bhakti from Garuda Purana and of sadhana bhakti, not of bhakti itself, but of sadhana bhakti, because we are talking about sadhana bhakti. And he asks, what is the Swarupa Lakshana of this definition of sadhana bhakti, and what is Tatastha Lakshana? Because everything which we define should be defined in accordance with these two lakshanas, these two signs. So, Tatastha Lakshana of sadhana bhakti is Yaya Sarvam Avapyate. By sadhana bhakti, you can achieve any purpose you want. In other words, Tatastha Lakshana of bhakti is that it's a very powerful process. It's the most powerful process. It's an essential element in any process. It's the living force of any processes. And if we achieve success in any path, the devotion is the key to success. If we do Hatha Yoga, devotion is the key to success. The faith in Hatha Yoga, in the process of Hatha Yoga, is the key of success. So bhakti is most powerful. Bhakti, the element of bhakti, is the most powerful. You can, practice your Hatha Yoga, but if you don't have devotion to this process, if you don't believe in this process, if you are not ultimately devoted to, some higher force behind this, you will not be successful in this process of Hatha Yoga or any other process, in fact. So the Tatastha Lakshana of sadhana bhakti is that it's powerful. But at the same time, we can see that not always we experience the power of bhakti. Anyway, so he goes further and he describes what is Svarupa Lakshana of sadhana bhakti. And he says, Svarupa Lakshana of sadhana bhakti is Tasmat Seva Buddhai Prakta. The Svarupa Lakshana of sadhana bhakti is Seva, is the spirit of service. So that's the definition of sadhana. Sadhana is, by sadhana you can achieve anything. By sadhana bhakti you can achieve practically anything. But the very essence of sadhana is this spirit of service, seva. And Srila Jiva Goswami gives a very important definition of what is seva. Because again, seva is a very vague term. Everyone says, I'm serving, I'm a sevaka. He gives a very interesting definition of seva. He says, Sacha seva kaika vachika manasatmika trividhaiva anugatir uchyate. He says, seva is anugatihi. Seva is anugatya. Seva is the ability to follow Krishna by our body, by our words, and by our mind. That's seva. In other words, what is bhakti? Bhakti starts when we relinquish our independence. Everyone in this world is under this illusion of independence. I'm independent. I want to do whatever I want. I will do this. I know better what I should do. So the seva starts when we relinquish this independence and we firmly say to ourselves, I will do what Krishna wants me to do. I will do what my spiritual master wants me to do. I will do what Srila Prabhupada wants me to do. Then seva starts. Before this decision, it's not bhakti. Bhakti only starts when there is this spirit, I want to follow. I am the follower. I'm not independent anymore. Therefore, this is the first difficulty in the path of bhakti. Because everyone wants to remain independent. It's very difficult to become the true follower. And from the very beginning, the definition of seva means I'm the follower. I'm not acting independently. I'm not speaking independently, and I'm not even thinking independently. Even on the level of thinking process, I should try to learn how to think in according to the way Krishna wants me to think. And of course, I should speak the way Krishna wants me to speak, not only about the subject matters, but the way he wants me to speak, with the mood he wants me to speak. Not only acting, speaking, and thinking. That's sadhana bhakti. So from the very beginning of this definition, we can see that it's not that easy. At the same time, when we see different definitions of bhakti, usually the definitions are quite simple, Savai pumsah paradharmoya to bhakti radoksaje ahaituke pratihatai atmasu prasidati etavane velokismin pumsah dharma parasmritha Bhakti Yoga Bhagavati. So Bhakti Yoga just, starts with Tannama Grahanadibhi. As soon as you start chanting the holy name, this is Bhakti. So we see this sometimes, there is emphasis on, it's easy. Just start chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. By definition, it's Bhakti. At the same time, there is another more strict definitions. Please watch out how you do it, with which consciousness you do it. So, and therefore, again, it's very important, and therefore, this is what Srila Prabhupada says here. And, or whatever, he was thrown far away, then he was very afraid, and whenever he would look, he would see Lord Ramachandra. And Ramanujacharya says, this is pure bhakti. You're so afraid of God, then whenever you look, you see him. So, but this is not our definition of bhakti. Madhvacharya gives his definition of bhakti. He says bhakti is the performance of this with a lot of jnana. He says that bhakti is jnana, basically. When you really understand who is God, who is you, how to do this, he gives this definition. Rupa Goswami says, no, anyabhilashata shunyam jnana karmadhyana vritam anukuliyana Krishna anushilanam. Anukuliyana Krishna anushilanam is bhakti. So anyway, even different acharyas give different definitions of bhakti. What to speak about us? There is a very good chance that we will ourselves start our own school of bhakti. I've seen so many people who are doing this. It's going on. This is the process, eternal process, which is going on. Therefore, again, we have our own concepts and conceptions, and moreover, we are not sometimes very self-analytical. We are not very introspective. And sometimes we don't see all these tendencies within our heart, how we do this mixture. It's very important for us to hear from somebody else, because ourselves, we naturally will add all these motivations and impure mixtures into our process of bhakti because of some tinges of impurities. There is a very interesting episode in Chaitanya Charitamrita in Anti-Lila when this Brahman from Bengal came and he read his drama to the devotees. Devotees were totally, completely mesmerized by his poetry. They were so happy, and they were applauding him, and they were saying, this is the best poetry, the best drama we have ever heard. And then Swarupa Damodar Goswami heard it, and he said, this is rubbish, this is garbage. This should be thrown into the garbage, because there is so much mixture there. So even the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu couldn't distinguish this. What to speak about us? It's not so easy. They didn't recognize the tinges of karma and jnana in the presentation of this Brahmana from Bengal. So there is a very good chance that we will, add some spices of karma and jnana into bhakti and destroy the whole process. Okay, that's more or less, And another, that's one reason why we should study very carefully. Another reason is that there is a lot of debate going on. What is bhakti? Is food for life pure bhakti or not? Is Harinam Sankirtana pure bhakti or not? Is remembering about Radha Krishna Lila pure bhakti or not? Srila Prabhupada used to say that it's not necessarily pure bhakti. The smaranam about Ashtakali Lila, it's not necessarily pure bhakti. So there are, in other words, it's not such an obvious thing which we should really understand. And when we take shower in the morning, is it a part of pure bhakti or not? Or is it something else? So all these questions, we have to know the very clear answers. And Srila Jiva Goswami, while analyzing this, he puts bhakti between different kinds of bhakti, between two axes. Like, in geometry, we have axis, vertical axis and horizontal axis. And then in between these two, we can put different kinds of bhaktis, and the place of this form of bhakti or that form of bhakti will be defined according to its position in these two axes. So he basically explaining or classifying different kinds of bhaktis, he takes two axes, and one axis is the form of activity, the external form of activity, what we are doing. That's important, because the position of particular bhakti is activity, bhakti is service. So what is the form? That's one description, one way of describing it. And in another axis, there is a consciousness of the performer. So we will have pure bhakti, which is, the whatever, whether it's there in the somewhere very high up, probably very high up, when the consciousness is very pure, and when the the very activity is very pure. But we can perform something which may look like bhakti, like smaranam on Krishna Lila, but it will not be pure Krishna bhakti, because the consciousness, the motivation will be impure. So again, and I will explain now, it will be very clear. One is the form or the activity itself, another one is the consciousness of the performer, motivation of the performer. And the result of our activity directly dependent on these two considerations. What are we doing exactly, and with which consciousness we are doing what we are doing. So therefore, these two things should be there. Like, for example, very clear thing, we may chant, and chanting is definitely bhakti by form. But if we chant with offenses, these offenses will block the power of bhakti. Srila Jiva Goswami gives the example of Chandrakanti Mani. Chandrakanti Mani is a jewel which has the power of moon. And because moon is cooling, this Chandrakanti Mani makes the fire cooling. It blocks the power of fire. The natural power of fire, Svarupa Shakti of fire, is to burn. But if Chandrakanti Mani is present, then the fire will not burn, because this power will be blocked. In the same way, certain blockages within our consciousness will stop the Vastu Shakti of Bhakti from acting, and the result will be different. So that's the general consideration. And Srila Jiva Goswami, first let's talk about the form. Srila Jiva Goswami says that if we take the forms of bhakti, there are three types of different forms of bhakti. One is called Aropasida Bhakti, another one is called Sangha Bhakti, and the third one is called Svarupasida Bhakti. So there are, whatever we do in devotional service falls into category of Aropasida Bhakti, Sangha Bhakti, and Svarupasida Bhakti. What is the word Siddha here means becoming. Aropasida Bhakti means, Aropa means adhyas, Aropa means attributive devotion, Aropa means superimposition. We superimpose bhakti on some activity which is not bhakti itself. This is Aropasida Bhakti. I am doing something, whatever it is. I am doing some karmakanda sacrifice, or I'm brushing my teeth, or I'm cooking, or whatever, or I'm doing some hatha yoga, or I'm doing some exercise. And at the end I say, Krishnarpanamastu. My dear Krishna, take this. I did it for you. So that's called Aropasida Bhakti. It can be any activity. We will describe it a little later in more details. But basically, we attribute the quality of bhakti into this activity. Any activity which we do, but we say, I'm doing it for Krishna, so that becomes the saving grace, that will become the element of bhakti within this activity. So that's the first type of activity, Aropasida Bhakti. Anything which we do, but at the end we say, Krishna, this is for you. Or we say, I'm doing this, this is my devotional service. Sangha Siddha, so this activity becomes bhakti due to Aropa. Therefore it's called Aropasida Bhakti. It becomes bhakti because we're superimposing bhakti onto this activity. It's not seva. It's not really service. We're not doing it as a service to the Supreme, but we're doing something which we like to do, and we say, yeah, this is for him. Sangha Siddha Bhakti, from the very definition or from the very name, Sangha Siddha Bhakti, it becomes bhakti because it is connected with bhakti. It is something which is somewhat connected with bhakti, which helps us to perform bhakti. Right? For example, we know that to perform bhakti, we need to concentrate our mind. So if we cultivate certain qualities in our mind, try to purify our mind, make our mind more concentrated, that's Sangha Siddha Bhakti. We're doing this to help us to perform devotional service. Or, for example, we're taking shower. It's not service itself. It's not direct service. Of course, it really depends on the consciousness of the performer. It can be direct service. But let's say we're taking shower, and at the same time we think, while taking shower, I'm doing this because I need to be clean to perform my service properly, to chant more properly, to make my mind more calm and more peaceful. I'm doing this. Then it is Sangha Siddha Bhakti. It becomes bhakti because it helps us to perform our service, to execute our service. And then Svarupasida Bhakti, it's bhakti by its very form. In other words, it's something which is always service. When we chant the name of God, Aropasida Bhakti, because it's service. We're serving the Lord. When we glorify the Lord, when we chant kirtan, it's Svarupasiddha Bhakti. When we read Srimad Bhagavatam or listen lectures of Srila Prabhupada, it's Svarupasiddha Bhakti because by the very form it is the service. The element of service to the Lord. The Lord as the object of our service is there in the act of this service. So in the act of doing. So this is the three categories of things which we can do according to this classification of Bhakti Sandarbha. And then Srila Jiva Goswami says that all these three things, Aropasida Bhakti, Sangasida Bhakti, and Svarupasida Bhakti, can be Kaitava or Akaitava. Can be with cheating mentality, or with wrong motivation, or can be with pure motivation, with the proper motivation. With motivation ultimately to please the Lord or to achieve the Lord, to become closer to Lord. So that's so we can see, if we take this whole area, then we can see there will be, in a plus, if in the horizontal axis we have the form of the activity, so on the positive part of the horizontal axis, we will have all kinds of activities with pure motive, akaitava. We don't want to cheat, we don't want to achieve something else. Ultimately, the purpose of whatever we're doing, whether it is Aropa, Sangha, or Svarupa, the purpose is to please the Lord. So that's Akaitava. And then we can do all these things to cheat the Lord. We can do with some other motivation, to gratify our senses, to aggrandize ourselves, to achieve some position in this world, to get some money, prestige, power, whatever. That's Kaitava. The wrong motivation, which will be displeasing to the Lord, which actually will bring another opposite result, will bring ruination to us. Because it's very dangerous to do bhakti with the wrong motivation. So, and whatever we do, we have to be very careful. Therefore, from the very beginning, Srila Jiva Goswami says, here we already have 6 kinds of understanding of it. So, and ultimately, only Svarupasiddha Bhakti, Akaitava Svarupasiddha Bhakti, is the pure Bhakti. Everything else is mixture. Even Aropasida Bhakti and Sangasida Bhakti is mixture. Akaitava Svarupasida Bhakti is the ideal, is the goal. And we should really understand what it is. About this we will speak probably on Saturday. Today we will speak about other stuff. Okay, so let's deal in more details what is Aropasida Bhakti. It's a very common phenomenon, and it's not necessarily bad, but we really clearly have to understand what it is. It's actually it's inevitable element in our practice of bhakti at a certain period of time. We will always start bhakti with this Aropasida Bhakti mentality, which we will explain in a moment. But I wanted to share some personal incident in my life. There was a very difficult period in my life when my Guru Maharaj, he changed his mind and his, there was quite a drastic change in his activities and behavior and speeches, and there was a lot of confusion and bewilderment. And in the course of this, somebody took me to one very powerful Acharya of Gaudiya Math. And he, of course, knew about this situation in ISKCON. And immediately, as soon as he saw me, he made his diagnosis, prescription. He basically defined the reason why did it happen. And he defined the reason why did it happen in 3 words. He said, Aropasida Bhakti. So that was his immediate, like this. I must say that I don't agree with this analysis. But why I'm telling this episode from my life, it's little simplistic what he did. Although you know there is definitely some element of this, some sort of, but it's definitely overly simplistic, not necessarily like this. But what I want to say by explaining this, oftentimes people, devotees from the outside, especially from some other Gaudiya organizations or Gaudiya groups, they look at ISKCON and they blame us. They say, you're not doing pure bhakti, you're doing Aropasida Bhakti. They see too strong element of aropa or of superimposition in our general practices. So that's their criticism. And there is some basis to this criticism. Also, again, I don't agree with this entirely, and I think this criticism sometimes misinformed or whatever, but and therefore we have to really know whether what we are doing is aropa or it is Svarupasiddha Bhakti, pure devotional service. So that's a little anecdote in this regard. And again, Aropasida Bhakti is the activity which has nothing to do with service to the Supreme Lord externally. But by our consciousness, we are attributing the element of bhakti into this activity. And the most common example of this kind of activity is the sacrifices to different demigods. You do some yaga to Navagraha, to the 9 planets, or you do some Shani Yagya. There is Shani Mandir here in Vraj. You go on Saturday to Shani Dev and you bring your jar of mustard seed oil to Shani Dev. So it has nothing to do, externally it has nothing to do with the desire to serve the Supreme Lord, to please the Supreme Lord. But we bring the jar of mustard seed oil to Shani and we say, Krishna Arpanamastu, Krishna, I'm doing it for you. So, Srila Narada Muni, in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, Naishkarmyam apachyuta bhava varjitam. If in our nishkama karma, we can be very pure, we can do some nishkama karma. We don't have any desire, we are doing, varnashrama, we're performing our duties, we don't have any selfish desires. Narada Muni says, useless waste of time. Naishkarmyam apachyuta bhava varjitam. If there is no achyuta bhava, if there is no Krishna bhava, desire to please the Lord by this activity, even if it's pure, even if it's very selfless, even if it's service to the humanity, Manava Seva, Madhava Seva, like Vivekananda said, we don't agree with this. It's not necessarily, it's not by definition Madhava Seva. Manava Seva is not by definition Madhava Seva. Not at all. So, basically, Srila Jiva Goswami says that this Aropasida Bhakti can be of three types. In other words, the activity which has nothing to do with the Supreme Lord, but can be designated as Bhakti, can be three types. Can be of three types. The first type is different karma kanda activity, Vedic activity, the activity which is recommended by the Vedas. There are so many activities which is recommended by the Vedas, by the Shastras, but they are not necessarily the direct service to the Supreme Lord. And we can perform this activity and we can say Krishnarpanamastu. You know, if you go to another, you know, I'm quite closely associating with devotees from Madhva Sampradaya, from followers of Madhvacharya. They often have this phrase, Krishnarpanamastu. Whatever they do, Krishnarpanamastu, that's for Krishna. You know, that's basically Aropasida Bhakti. And again, it's not necessarily bad. We have this consciousness, I'm doing it for the Lord. So the first type is Vedic activity, Vaidika activity. Another type of Aropasida Bhakti can be our daily activities. Krishna gives this definition of Aropasida Bhakti in case of our daily activities in the verse of Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yat juhosi dadasi, yat, whatever you do, offer it to me. You know, and why it is Aropa? Because I don't have the consciousness of the servant. I'm separate. I am separated myself. I'm Binadrik, my vision, my consciousness, my heart is separated. I have this Prithak Bhava. I'm not dependent on the Lord. I'm doing this, and then very generously I'm saying, Krishna, this is for you. Yat karosi yadasnasi yat juhosi dadasi yat. And this is good. This is some sort of bhakti, Aropasida Bhakti. In the beginning, it's necessary. And then the next kind of activity, which can be Aropasida Bhakti, is the sinful activity. Srila Jiva Goswami says that even sinful activity can be Aropasida Bhakti, can be kind of Bhakti. So the three kinds of activities, Vaidika karma, the daily karma, then, you know, our ordinary activities, and even sinful activities, we can do this trick of designating it as bhakti. And Srila Jiva Goswami teaches us how to do this. Even how to perform sinful activities as our generous offering to Krishna. So I'm sure you're all intrigued by by this prospect. So he says that basically the Aropasida Bhakti is described in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter number 2, verse number 36. Kayena vacha manasen indriyairva buddhyatmana vanusmrita svabhavat karoti yat sakalam parasmai narayaneti samarpayetam. Sorry. Скажи пожалуйста, читать мне, что я сейчас занят. Спасибо. Sorry. So he says, whatever svabhava you have, whatever nature. Sorry, what happened? It is said in this verse that whatever nature you may acquire, whatever, by your body, by your speech, and by your mind, and by your indriya, by your senses, by your atma, purified consciousness, you have to worship the Supreme, thinking, I'm doing all this for the satisfaction of Lord Narayana. That's the definition, the mood, the consciousness of Aropasida Bhakti. You have certain nature, and this nature impels you to do something. Somebody has Kshatriya nature, and he does some, he wants to control, and he has this Ishvara Bhava. He wants to rule and manage. Somebody has Vaishya nature. Somebody has Brahminical nature. So you can imply your nature, svabhavat. From this svabhava, you can act, but whatever you do, by your body, by your intelligence, by your speech, you just say, Narayanayeti. This is for Narayana. Narayanaya, iti. You say, Krishnaya astu. This is, Krishnaya svaha. This is for Lord Krishna. This is for Lord Narayana. This is for Samarpayat. You offer it to him. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, please listen, it's a very interesting point. He explains what is Aropasida Bhakti in the example of our daily activities. We all do daily activities. We all brush our teeth, I hope. We all wash our hands. We all, take shower. We all eat. We all sleep. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that, if a karma kandiya is doing all these activities throughout the day, we all associate with the members of our family, we all discuss our plans with them. So if somebody is karma kandiya, he wants to do it by following the prescriptions of this section of the Vedas. He will do it, but he will have in mind that I'm doing it so that my forefathers would be pleased, demigods would be pleased. I'm doing it with this consciousness, he is doing this. Ordinary person, just, rank and file person, he is doing this and he is doing this for his own satisfaction. Why he is brushing his teeth, why he is taking shower. He's taking shower and he is thinking, oh, this is nice, I'm so refreshed. Or I'm eating and he's at the same time thinking, I'm doing this because, I need a lot of energy to enjoy, to continue enjoying. This is the consciousness behind. And the devotee is doing this, and he is doing all these daily activities for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Even while brushing teeth, he is thinking, I'm doing this because I will be chanting Lord's holy name, and if my teeth are not very clean, the holy name will smell the the odor of my mouth. Позвони ему, я же попросил тебя. Позвони ему. I'm sorry, somebody is really determined to speak with me at this moment. So that's the consciousness, and that's Aropasida Bhakti. If we have this consciousness, whatever we do, I'm doing this, I'm doing exercise. For what I'm doing exercise, what is the cause behind my exercise? Ultimately to perform the devotional service, to be more fit, to do this, and that will become Aropasida Bhakti. That will connect our consciousness while we are performing this activity, which is externally disconnected from the Supreme Lord. And Srila Jiva Goswami, he gives a very interesting explanation how to offer dushkarma, the sinful activities, to the Supreme Lord. He gives a prayer. He gives a few verses which explain the mood. Somebody is doing some sinful activities. He has this very strong impetus to do something sinful, but at the same time he says, Anena durvasana dukkha darshanena sa karunamaya karunam karotu. Let the merciful Lord give me his mercy, seeing how I am suffering, and by noticing durvasana in myself. Anena durvasana dukkha darshanena sakarunamaya karunam karotu. Let the merciful Lord, karunamaya, become merciful unto me, because he see how I'm suffering by performing the sinful activities. I know it is sinful. I know it's bad. At the same time, I feel very strong impetus to do it. I'm suffering because of this. I cannot get rid of this. And I'm praying to the Lord, please free me from these durvasanas, from this, and please be merciful, because I am not happy myself. So in this way, even dushkarma can become sort of bhakti. By this mentality, the sinful activity becomes Aropasida Bhakti. We're turning even sinful activity into the activity of bhakti. It's not an excuse to perform sinful activities, because you really have to feel all this. You have to feel the remorse, but it's the chance to somebody who is just beginning his devotional path to even purify and sanctify his sinful tendencies by this sort of mentalities. He gives some other prayers of this sort. Mama sukarmani dushkarmani cha yatraga samanyam tat sarvato bhavena bhagavat vishayan eva bhavatu. I want, by all my heart, I want the attachment which I have to dushkarma and sukarma, to turn this attachment to you, my Lord. That's another prayer which turns both sukarma and dushkarma into the activity of the Lord. We see, I have very strong impetus or desire to do something, sinful activities or even pious activity. But it's not connected with the Lord whatsoever. But by noticing this impetus within myself, I'm praying to the Lord, oh my Lord, let the same force, the same impetus which is there, which pushes me to do this activity, let the same impetus will be turned into my service to you. So this is how we should deal with this. And Srila Jiva Goswami says many interesting things in this regard. He says, if somebody if somebody offers the fruits of his karma to the Lord, then the fruits of his karma may exceed all his expectations. The fruits may become completely, amazing. If you have this mentality, you're doing this, you are more or less, you feel that you have to do it, you're forced to do it by maybe social obligations or by some other things. But if you do it, with this mentality, I'm doing it for the Lord, then the fruit will be more than if you do it with the ordinary consciousness. And another element, very important, if we do this, if we sincerely offer this to the Lord, then there will not be any consequences of these activities, neither bad or good. We are removing the poisonous element from karma. We are doing karma. We are doing karmic activities, but we sincerely within our heart saying, my dear Lord, this is for you. I'm not going to enjoy the fruits of these activities. Please take it. So the Lord will accept this offering of us, and He will free us from the karmic element of it. We will be purified, And again, the key word here is svabhava. Our svabhava pushes us to do something. We are more or less forced to do it by our svabhava. And if we do it with this mentality of Aropasida Bhakti, it will purify us. So, in other words, Aropasida Bhakti is acceptable. It's not bad. It becomes Akaitava Aropasida Bhakti if the goal of Aropasida Bhakti is ultimately to achieve devotion to the Lord, to achieve bhakti to the Lord. So in all these three sections, Vedic activity, ordinary activity, or even sinful activity, if the goal of this very clearly established, I want to achieve bhakti to the Lord, love and service to the Supreme Lord, and therefore I'm doing this and offering this to the Lord, then it's okay, then it's Akaitava. But if I do this and I offer it to the Lord, oh my dear Lord, but at the same time I have this, I heard this, that the fruit will be more if I offer it to the Lord. And I'm offering to the Lord because I want bigger fruit. Because Jiva Goswami says that, that the fruit will be more impressive, exceed my expectations. So then it's Kaitava, the motivation is wrong. So this Aropasida Bhakti, again, the proper motivation is that I'm doing this to achieve the devotion to the Lord. And therefore, it's a good starting point in our devotional service. We have to start somewhere, and that's a good starting point with this Aropasida Bhakti. Yes, Prangavinda Prabhu. Okay, and Padmanayan Prabhu. The questions are there.
Please accept my obeisances. All the best to Prabhupada. I'm so happy to see you.
Hare Krishna, I'm happy to see you. It must be very early in Florida. Or where are you?
Yeah, my class started at 2:30 in the morning.
That's definitely Svarupasida Bhakti.
Maharaj, your explanation is really excellent in one sense. So I have a few questions. I don't know, maybe I'll ask one question because others are there. But in this regarding Aropasida Bhakti, I see the similar pattern in Karma Yoga 3.9 Bhagavad Gita, Jagratat Karmana Annatra, that Arjuna says, what if I am qualified for Jnana Yoga? Krishna is still pressuring him to do Karma Yoga, not Jnana Yoga. Even though he may be qualified, because what assumed natures, Kshatriya Bhav, to fight, it has to be purified by engaging.
Yeah.
Am I right? Is it similar to
Yeah,
this
it is the
yoga?
same. It's karma yoga. Yeah, you can call it karma yoga, karma mishra bhakti. You know, it's karma yoga in a, it's not pure karma yoga. It's karma yoga in the sense of Bhagavad Gita, which is actually not karma yoga in a pure sense. It's karma mishra bhakti. Sri Krishna does not recommend pure karma yoga, you know, classical karma yoga, so to speak. He recommends karma mishra bhakti, and therefore I said there is a place of Aropasida Bhakti. It's a good starting point because it purifies our nature and it frees us from all kinds of consequences of our karma. So it's not necessarily bad. But we should not also insist or continue doing this Aropasida Bhakti. After some time, we should really understand what is Svarupasida Bhakti, which will be the topic of our next class session.
Okay.
Yes, Padmanayan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Maharaj. Very happy to see you today.
Yes,
Hare
I'm
Krishna.
happy to see you.
So Maharaj, when you are explaining about Svarupasida Bhakti, so then you did mention about this Akaitava. It has to be Akaitava. Goal should be to please to exclusively serve the Lord, Krishna. So then you explain that if the goal is to please Krishna, then that is actually Svarupasiddha and Suddha, pure Bhakti. Okay. That is what actually we supposed to be doing. We must be doing. But my question is here, when we speak about, when you discuss about the definition of your devotional service, Anukulyena Krishnamasilanam. And Prabhupada, in his commentary, he says very clearly here, Krishna means Krishna
And his devotees.
His pure devotees, paraphernalia. It kind of, connects all those items to Krishnamasilanam. Then my question is, when we are in a society where we have to deal with different kind of devotees, and then when we say we have to perform Svarupasiddha Bhakti, that has to be Akaitava, and then it definitely in relation to Krishna means Krishna's devotee also, it can automatically included.
Yeah.
Then my confusion is, not in the society all devotees are in kind of having that kind of pure thought and approach, because sometimes you can see there is some sort of duplicitous mentality. I don't know whether it is right to say it like that or not, but sometimes it becomes very prominent, very obvious that the devotee comes to you and he speaks in a particular way, but from behind you can see he's kind of totally acting in a different way. That is kind of many times we have perceived this. So then when we say our bhakti should be Akaitava, Svarupasiddha, and that to please, our intention should be to please Krishna means, then here I'm not stopping there. Krishna means Krishna devotee. So when is this pure heart, pure desire, but I can see in his activity, he is kind of doing something different, which brings a kind of question to my faith on what I am practicing, or whether I am in a correct situation or not.
Therefore you don't have to please him, no problem. You don't have to please him. When we're talking about, we will talk about this on Saturday more about this pure devotional service, what this Svarupa Siddha Bhakti is, and how to perform it. But basically, yes, we have to please the Lord, and we have to please the Lord devotees. But if somebody is not pleased and he happened to be devotee, it does not necessarily disqualify us, because if our motivation is to please the Lord and we're sincerely trying to please the Lord, and by the way we're displeasing somebody who may not be Akaitava himself. So there is not a big deal, let him be displeased. No problem. It does not disturb the purity of our motivation. Sometimes devotees will be displeased with what we are doing, and it may be the proper displeasure because they see that we are doing something improperly, but not necessarily so. Sometimes they will be displeased because we are not pleasing their material ego. Okay, fine, whatever. Yes, Kamalalochen Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Can you turn on your?
Yeah, when I read something, that is why.
Okay, fine. Whatever you.
So I just I don't know, mobile it happens like that. When I read something and then show it, the picture doesn't come.
Yeah.
Maharaj, I basically just want, it's a big question, a long question, because a long time confusion for many years. I come from, I was born in the Madhva Sampradaya, and when I got Prabhupada's books, initially the young blood is there. I started going blah 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 about Madhva Sampradaya, their practices, and then say pure devotionals are your Karma Mishra, your Tattavadis. But in the course of my study of Srimad Bhagavatam a few years back, Krishna Chakra's commentary on Bharat Maharaj, that is 5.7.6, just canto 7 chapter 6 verse. It describes that Bharat Maharaj, he performed all the yajnas very skillfully, having a priest, Advaya priest performing the rites. So there in the purport, Srila Vishwanath Thakur says that the Lord has said Tavat Karmani Purvita, that verse, the time we have achieved complete attraction for Krishna Katha, Mat Katha, we have to perform karma. Now, he raises a question. How is that Bharat Maharaj, a person who is qualified for pure devotion, with deep faith in the topic of Lord, Krishna Katha, without any material desire, performed Karma Yoga and employed it in the, enjoyed its results? This verse answers the question. I will summarize the entire purport. He says that Bharat Maharaj did not do karma directly. He appointed a ritvik. He was only a sponsor. He was not directly doing that. Number one. Still, a person who is he can be in the platform of pure devotional service, even at the level of bhava, can do karma, keeping somebody as a sponsor, in which the devatas are worshipped. The translation goes like this. He thought of Vasudeva, the enjoyer of the results of sacrifices, Yajna Purusha, as a controller of the devatas, who are the gods of the mantras, which reveal the devatas. Sarva Devata Linganam. So it says. And last, one more point, many points are there, one more point says, when Bharat Maharaj was sitting in the sacrifice, when the Ahuti was doing, the Pujari is doing Idam Indraya Swaha, Idam Indraya Namamaha, Bharat Maharaj was thinking that this is the hand of Krishna, Indra is the hand of Krishna. So, basically, when I read this thing, then I went to Pali Maharaj Swamiji and then I had a long discussion. Till now, I was just thinking, this Karma Mixture Bhakti is what is proposed by our Acharya Madhva. Then he laughed at me and then explained the same point. He told, when the Madhvas do karma, he told me that what is happening these days, don't ask me. But if you go to the pure Siddhanta, what Madhvacharya has established is not Jnana Mishra or Karma Mishra, but it is pure Bhakti. And then he quoted very surprisingly, he told, when Madhvacharya says Jnana, it is not referring to impersonal Jnana, not just another Jnana.
Of course.
It is different to Bhakti.
Yes.
And it was similar to 9th chapter, second verse.
Where
Vishwanath Thakur says,
yes,
where it is said Jnana, it is not Jnana, because in
it's
the
Bhakti.
following verse, Dharma is mentioned. So it is actually bhakti.
Yeah.
So now how do we understand? Because all my relatives, they are all just into these sacrifices. When I had to go to my house and all, I did a mistake for 10 years, just criticizing the sampradaya in which I was born. Or am I confused? I just want to know about it from your this thing. Is Madhva Sampradaya, Madhvacharya is talking only about Aropita Bhakti, Karma Aropita Bhakti, or is he talking about pure devotion?
See, again, let's thank you for this question. It's a difficult question, but it requires long answer. I'll try to be short. Why we don't call these Vedic sacrifices as such as Aropasida Bhakti? Because by the form, it's not the service to the Lord. It's not the service to the Lord. It can be the service to the Lord by the consciousness of the performer, as you said. It becomes the service to the Lord through the consciousness of performer. Performer, as you said, we are doing some sacrifice to Indra, and performer says, yes, Indra is the hand of Krishna, and therefore, he thinks, and therefore, in his mind, he turns this, or he superimposes the pure bhakti into this act, which is not directly pleasing to the Lord. Because, the Lord is not sitting in, Galoka Vrindavana and, thinking, far out, this person is doing some sacrifice for Indra. Very good, very good. So it is a devotional service, and it's not bad. And there is a room for this Aropasida Bhakti. In many regards, and we should not criticize it. And by the consciousness of the performer, it can be purified. The only problem is that normally when people do it, they usually don't do this, alchemistry of turning this into pure devotional service, and they, very simple-heartedly think, okay, let's do this Navagraha Yagya because I need some protection from these 9 planets, or this or that. So, therefore, our acharyas, they're not so much into it, but they also say, they explain what are the relationship with this demigod worship, how the demigod worship is actually acceptable, that it's not bad, we should not condemn it, we shouldn't offend other people. If people see that the demigods are servants of the Lord and they worship the demigods as the servants of the Lord, that's fine. Like here in Vraj, we have this Shani temple, and in Vraj everyone is the servant of the Supreme Lord. So, if we go to Shani and we worship Saturn with this consciousness that he is the servant of the Lord and I'm doing this, that's fine. It may not be the highest high-class devotional service, but it's a devotional service, and it's, depending on the purity of the performer, it can be. Like Srila Jiva Goswami also gives the example of a pure devotee who was forced to worship Shiva Lingam, and while worshipping Shiva Lingam, he was forced to do it, and he started meditating that Lord is within the heart of this Shiva Lingam, and then and he started offering the mantras of Narasimhadev, Om Narasimhaya Svaha, and then this Shiva Lingam burst into 2, and Narasimhadev appeared from this. So it very much depends on the consciousness of the performer, and if people have the proper siddhanta and proper understanding, they can do it. But usually people don't do it with this consciousness, and that's also quite clear. I don't know if I answered you, but we should not criticize others, but we should try to help them to understand how to do it more properly, like you did by going to this Palimarmat Swamiji and asking his understanding. I'm not criticizing, and definitely when Madhvacharya speaks about bhakti and mentions the word jnana, he doesn't mean impersonal jnana. He definitely means that the bhakti becomes pure when it is coupled with the knowledge of the Shastras, with the understanding of the Shastras. Basically, when he says that there is some jnana, performance of jnana, the bhakti becomes pure, he means the knowledge of Sambandha Jnana, the proper knowledge of the Shastras, definitely. There is no doubt about it. Nevertheless, if we analyze very clearly, the definition of bhakti is not so clear. We are not criticizing everyone, but we are glorifying Rupa Goswami's definition, which is amazing. So, you're muted, Kamal Lochin Prabhu.
One more small point, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Now, the Gaudiya Math thing, what you started off with, that is, Aropasida Bhakti, ISKCON is into that. It is very common and a well-known fact because our head Pujari, he's a Bengali and he was in the Gaudiya Math before and joined ISKCON. So we have quite often Shastrartha with him. Basically, they have a point to say why it is Aropasida Bhakti. But at the same time, when you see Archana, which is actually pure devotional service, from a broader perspective, then what we are doing in ISKCON, running even Govindas, running, building temples, having marriage halls, and even doing some food for life, there's different. All these things can be pure devotional service.
Can be, no doubt about it. It can be, again, it very much depends on the consciousness of performer, and it can be pure devotional service in the sense that it purifies our heart, preparing it for pure devotional service, and it's the same thing which Narada Muni says. Narada Muni says that how you cure the disease of karma by employing the same karma, basically. We have disease, we have this...
but we cannot call this as Aropasida Bhakti, because the consciousness is pure. Then how can it be called as preparation for pure devotional?
No, it can be... it is Aropasida Bhakti. If it is by... See, if we're building the temple for the Lord, for the pleasure of the Lord, that's not Aropasida Bhakti. If our consciousness is pure, and if we're doing this, this is Pada Sevanam. This is basically, our humble offering to the Supreme Lord for His pleasure. But if we're doing some other things, which may not be directly connected with the service of the Lord, it can be Aropasida Bhakti, but there is nothing wrong with Aropasida Bhakti. They, in blaming ISKCON that we are doing too much Aropasida Bhakti, they don't understand that this is a very essential part of devotional service due to the whole understanding and the goal of it. Again, Aropasida Bhakti is not necessarily a bad word, whereas in Gaudiya Math it's a bad word. And what can we do? This is their understanding, but this is not Jiva Goswami's understanding, and it's definitely not Srila Prabhupada's understanding. It has its place, and it has very important place, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just we have to understand the whole picture and be very clear that this is the activity which I am doing to obtain the pure devotional service.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
We have many questions. What shall we do? I don't know. I need, maybe Rishi Kumar Prabhu will ask his question because he is for a long time. And the rest, Rukmini Krishna, Nanda Kumar, Sankarshan Nitai, Savyasachi Prabhu, maybe we can postpone it for a little at the end. Because I want at least to finish with this Aropasida Bhakti and a little bit about, because it's a lot of things to do. Yes, Rishi Kumar Prabhu.
Manabram Maharaj, grateful for the wonderful association. Privileged to hear from you. Maharaj, my question is, prima facie, it seems as if we give the definition of Yukta Vairagya as Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. So Aropasida at a pinch sounds exactly like that which is completely unrelated in a way. You're connecting it, it's something like a force fitting of it, but yet if it is done with a reasonable consciousness, which is what you just said right now. Mm-hmm. So how is it different in that sense? It's almost like Yukta Vairagya then.
It's just about different things. Yukta Vairagya, the definition of Yukta Vairagya, which Srila Rupa Goswami gives in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is basically the mood, what he defines what Vairagya is, and he warns us from prematurely renouncing things which can be used in Krishna's service. Here we are describing it from a different angle. We are describing it from the angle of understanding, how to designate this sort of activity. If it is, because in this definition of Yukta Vairagya, where the Vairagya, the spirit of Vairagya is being defined, there are many different things, not necessarily Aropasida Bhakti. It can be different things. It's just a different definition, different tattva is being defined. Here we're defining the activity, how to understand what we are doing, and what is the consciousness of the performer. Because the same activity, like brushing the teeth, can be pure devotional service, can be Sanghasiddha Bhakti, can be Aropasida Bhakti, can be karma, can be karma kanda. It's the same activity. But depending on the consciousness of the performer, we will have different results of it. It can be pure devotional service. If you brush the teeth and you think, I'm doing it because Krishna wants me to do it, because this is the order of my spiritual master, because this Sanatana Goswami says I have to do it, and this is in line of this, that's a part of pure devotional service. It has nothing to do with it. It's not Aropasida Bhakti, it's not Sanghasiddha Bhakti, it's Svarupasiddha Bhakti. And I'm doing it, connected with the Lord in the consciousness of being the servant, the dasa. So it's just different categories being defined. Okay, so if you allow me, I will quickly go further, because there are a few more points which we have to go. So we spoke about Aropasida Bhakti, and when Aropasida Bhakti becomes akaitava, when it is acceptable, if the goal of this is to achieve the devotional service and to purify the heart, it's a good start. But the problem of Aropasida Bhakti is that we still, our consciousness is still disconnected from the Lord. We are separate and the Lord is separate. because the very act of offering the results of my activity means that I didn't offer myself to the Lord. If initially, before doing any activity, I already offered anything which I do myself to the Lord, then automatically whatever I do and all the fruits belong to the Lord. If I am a slave of somebody, then whatever I do, the fruits of it don't belong to me. The very fact that I feel that I'm doing something and there is some fruits and I'm entitled to offer these fruits to the Lord means that I'm separating myself from the Lord. There is a separate ego, and therefore it's there is some separatedness, whereas some prithak bhava, whereas the ideal pure devotional service is this condition of our consciousness when I'm dasa, I'm the servant all the time, and therefore there is no separate fruits which I have to offer to the Lord. Everything anyway belongs to Him, and He is the enjoyer of these fruits. Okay, so Sangasida Bhakti. As I said, if something which we do can help our bhakti, like control of mind, meditation, understanding that I'm not this body, it's not the service itself by its very form, but it's helpful in our service. It can help in our service. And Srila Jiva Goswami usually, there is a lot of confusion about this Aropasida Bhakti, Sangasida Bhakti. Oftentimes people say Aropasida Bhakti, it's Karma Mishra Bhakti, and Sangasida Bhakti is Jnana Mishra Bhakti. It's not necessarily like this, at least according to Srila Jiva Goswami, how he explains this in Bhakti Sandarbha, which is the foundational text for us. Because Sangasida Bhakti can belong to the category of Jnana and can belong to the category of Karma as well. Sangasida Bhakti, it's when I feel that I cannot properly practice my bhakti without doing this or that or this, without, meditation. I'm doing some meditation and I feel that I will not properly perform bhakti. In other words, there is a little mixture here. We don't trust the Svarupasiddha Bhakti, we don't trust the power of Svarupasiddha Bhakti to purify and to make us competent to perform bhakti, 100%. But we still have this little contamination that I need to do something else to perform bhakti properly. I need to develop certain qualities in myself, like the quality of compassion. It basically means that I don't believe that by practicing bhakti, the compassion will be developed automatically. Or I think that I definitely have to develop renunciation, and my endeavor to develop renunciation becomes a separate endeavor. It's one thing if I'm performing bhakti and I'm really getting into bhakti, and the renunciation becomes the side effect of my strong practice of bhakti. And another thing is that I think, no, really, to do bhakti, to perform bhakti properly, I really have to practice renunciation. I have to fast, very strictly, rigidly, eat only one time a day. This is Sangasida Bhakti. I'm doing this, and I have this little separate mentality that only if I do this, I will be successful in my bhakti. Whereas we know that the success of bhakti lies in the understanding that everything else is the side effect of bhakti, not that we have to do something separate to achieve the success in bhakti. That bhakti is self-sufficient. Also, like Rupa Goswami says this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, in the initial stages of bhakti, jnana, renunciation, and jnana, understanding I am not this body, or performing varnashrama can be helpful, can be beneficial. So Sanghasiddha Bhakti, again, it's not a bad thing, although there is some little, tinge of separatist mentality in the performance of this type of bhakti. But Srila Rupa Goswami says it can be helpful. There is nothing wrong with it, unless we make undue emphasis on this kind of activities. Unless we try to, to emphasize separately, yes, I have to develop renunciation, yes, I have to develop compassion, yes, I have to develop the, purity of my heart, this and that. I don't... Just 1 second. Скажи, пожалуйста, Ударе даме, что попозже он сейчас звонит. Like, for example, the classical example of Aropasida Bhakti, Sanghasiddha Bhakti, is the verses 8 to 12 from the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita describes the qualities of knowledge, amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsak, shantir, arjavam, and so on and so forth. This is the classical example. And sometimes we can see the description of devotional service which also belongs to this type of bhakti. It's Sanghasiddha Bhakti, but it has, when the description of the sadhana is being done, it has these elements of some other things which are not really the direct devotional service, but they are not bad, and they are included into this sadhana. Srila Jiva Goswami gives as example of this mixed with Sanghasiddha Bhakti sadhana, the description of Bhagavad Gita. So, Sri Kapila Dev describes this Sanghasiddha Bhakti. And he says, for example, the text number 18, a devotee should always try to hear about spiritual matters and should always utilize his time in chanting the holy name of the Lord. His behavior should always be straightforward and simple. And although he is not envious but friendly to everyone, he should avoid company of persons who are not spiritually advanced. So there are some, and in the previous verse, the pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals, but all his activities should be executed under regulations and control of the senses. Again, the same kind of, stipulations are there. There is elements of pure devotional service as such. The elements of activities which by the very essence is the devotional service, the service to the Lord. And then there are some other mixtures of other things which are not bad, which are helpful to devotional service, but may kind of shift our emphasis sometimes. We can see it, sometimes people become too much into, austerities, and they perform austerities, undue austerities, which ultimately may not be helpful. because we know that vairagya is good when it is a byproduct of devotion. When it's cultivated separately, it may bring about the dryness of the heart and may become not beneficial for the emotional service, and will become the subject of pride. Devotees will become proud because I'm so advanced and I'm so renounced, and you are who you think you are, and you will just be very haughty and proud, and ultimately commit the offenses. So, like Raghunath Das Goswami, when we glorify the renunciation of Raghunath Das Goswami, he was sleeping for 2 hours a day, he was only eating very little buttermilk every second day, this and that, that's fine. But we should understand that he didn't cultivate it separately. He was not, performing the special diet, to this. That was the natural outcome, the natural byproduct of his devotion. He was so absorbed and so blissful because of his devotional activities that he didn't feel the need to do this. So, but we, being inspired by this description, may shift our emphasis into this. And that will become Aropasida Bhakti, which again is okay in the beginning, but not maybe beneficial at the end of the day. And just one more little thing. What about humility? Because somebody may ask, usually when people say about Sanghasiddha Bhakti, they say Sanghasiddha Bhakti is the attempt to develop certain qualities which will be beneficial for our devotional service. So, is it the development of humility, is it Svarupasiddha Bhakti, or is it Sanghasiddha Bhakti? Yes, it can be Sanghasiddha Bhakti. And therefore, the verses 8 to 12 from the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita start with humility. Amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsakshanti rarjavam. Amanitvam, you don't demand, the honor and respect, and you are not really dambik, you are not really proud. It can be Aropasida Bhakti, but it can be also Svarupasida Bhakti. If we understand that humility is the natural quality of a servant, and we want to become the servant, we want to serve, our main motivation is to develop the excellence of service and to be the follower of Krishna, the follower of spiritual master, the follower of Srila Prabhupada. If we develop humility in the context of service or as the precondition to service, not really precondition. Precondition is Sanghasiddha Bhakti. But if it's concomitant factor of service, if it's an attribute of service, then it's not. Then it's Svarupasiddha Bhakti, and therefore Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he says that humility, dainya, and prema are basically interdependent. The humility brings prema, and prema brings more humility. The prema or bhakti makes you more humble, and humility gives you more prema or more devotion or more service attitude. Therefore, humility is different. Whereas such things as control of the mind, meditation, purity of the mind is Sanghasiddha Bhakti. So that's a little bit little bit about this part of things. Let me see if I have something else which I missed. Yeah. Anyway, so I more or less said everything. So I wanted also to touch today some other things about the mentality of the performer, but apparently we will have to do it next time on Saturday. So let's answer the other questions which we have. So Nanda Kumar Prabhu, please. Oh, no, Rukmini Krishna Prabhu, please. You ask your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maharaj. It was wonderful and very thought-provoking. My question, Maharaj, regarding this Sangha Siddha Bhakti, if you try to chant with a Sambandh Gyan, it will be Sangha Siddha or Swarup Siddha?
No. No. See, no, it's Svarupsiddha Bhakti. It's definitely Svarupsiddha Bhakti because we're chanting. Our intention is pleasing to the Lord. We know that if we chant with Sambandha Gyan, it's more pleasing to the Lord because we want to. Sambandha Gyan, basically the understanding that I'm not separate from the Lord. I'm already connected with the Lord. So this chanting is more pleasing to the Lord. No, it's not. It's definitely Svarupa Siddha Bhakti. Svarupa
And like
Siddha.
if I'm trying to control my mind by this and understand I'm not this body and this soul, then it can be Sangha Siddha Bhakti.
Yeah, that's Sangha Siddha Bhakti. If I really try to emphasize this point and I try to control my mind by meditating on this, I'm not this body, then it's Sangha Siddha Bhakti.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you.
Yes, Nanda Kumar Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Yes,
Thank you
Hare
so much
Krishna.
for the discussion. Sorry for absence of video because my internet is very poor. So my question regarding these devotees who cannot recognize faults in this poetry of this Brahmana. So can you kindly elaborate a little bit more about this? Because looks like that their ignorance don't become obstacles and then become personal associates of Lord Chaitanya, or it's due to some extramural. For example, what is the distinguish the case? What is the difference between Chota Haridas, for example? He was also like this kind of, I don't know how to say, neophyte, and in these circumstances he manifests this, or he just manifests his free will. So it means these devotees looks like they also can fall in some kind of situation like this. So can you kindly elaborate about this kind of devotees who, you understand? Sorry, thank you so much.
First of all, we should be very clear. For us, all the devotees, followers of Lord Chaitanya are Nitya Siddhas. Narottam Das Thakur says that you can achieve the success in devotional service only if you consider the followers of Lord Chaitanya. If we start distinguishing this is this, this is that, it will be very dangerous for us, especially in our neophyte condition. We should not distinguish among this. I gave this example only to say that, it's all these nuances are not so simple, and even the pure devotees, the direct followers of Lord Chaitanya, may not distinguish all these nuances. It does not really diminish their devotion. They are pure devotees. They are, super pure devotees, no problem. I just gave this example for us to emphasize that we should be very sensitive in our approach to devotional service, and we should distinguish we should develop this very acute sense of what is pure devotional service. And of course, we shouldn't be paranoid, but we should really clearly understand this is the pure devotional service. Like, for example, we're not talking about these nuances because in the poetry of this Bengali poet, it was a nice poetry, and ultimately Swarup Damodar Goswami explained it in a very devotional way too. But there was some rasabas, some little, misunderstanding, and the devotees were not sensitive enough. And basically, I gave this example only for us not to judge these devotees. These devotees are pure, but for us to emphasize that we need to develop this sense. And what it means that somebody gives class and he becomes very enthusiastic and he calls us, let's do this and let's do this. Okay, fine, that may be good, but we should not criticize this. We should be very respectful and very very appreciative of his enthusiasm, but not necessarily we should do everything. Sometimes I heard devotees were saying, emphasizing, for example, austerities, too much austerities, or this or that. We should have very balanced and proper way without going into criticism, but at the same time understanding and preaching in a very balanced way. That's the whole idea. Try to preach to others in a balanced way and be introspective, understand our motivations, be careful about our motivations, and not to... So that's the only purpose, not to criticize the followers of Lord Chaitanya, otherwise we will just go to hell.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Okay. So Savyasachi Prabhu had his hand before. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, please accept mine.
Maharaj, will it be correct to say that the Akaitava variety of all the three, whether it is Aropasida, Sangha Siddha or Swarup Siddha, they belong to Anyabhilashita verse, the corresponding definition of Rupa Goswami of pure devotional service. It is equivalent to the Akaitava variety of all these three, because when we are in this material body, it is imperative we have to brush our teeth if we have material body. But if we are doing it purely to is Akaitava, and then it is also in the category of Anyabhilashita Shunya verse, because in that verse it is said Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma So Jnana Karma Avratam, it not said Shunya. There the Acharya in that karma is so
yes. Yes, it can be categorized as the Uttama Bhakti if we employ Jnana Karma in the service of the Lord, and if our intention, if our motivation is to please the Lord, Krishna Anushilanam. Yes, we can perform Jnana and practices of Jnana and Bhakti, and we are performing practices of Jnana and Bhakti in our daily activities, Jnana and Karma in our daily activities, but we have to be really, really clear about our motivation, then the motivation should be Krishna Anushilanam, that this is Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. We're doing, and therefore Srila Rupa Goswami uses this Anushilanam because Srila Jiva Goswami explains what is Shildhatu. Shildhatu basically means any activity. Shildhatu, any activity can be classified into this. Therefore, he specifically used this very broad dhatu in this. So yes, it's definitely like this. So the main emphasis is the motivation. If the motivation is pure, then we can perform jnana and karma activities, and it will fall into this category. Yes. So, Padmanabhan Prabhu, you can ask your question, or we're already over time. I don't know.
Very short question, Maharaj. I will not take much time. In deity worship, Maharaj, when we are doing this Bhuta Suddhi, and all Naham Vipra Natanapati, Naku Vaishna Suddhi, the verse which I know. So this is like, a preparatory act to perform, to enter into the worship of the Lordship. So that aspect of our service can be defined as a Sangha Siddha Bhakti?
No, it will become Sangha Siddha Bhakti, only if we emphasize this as a separate practice. As a separate practice, and we practice it separately, as a separate sort of meditation. It's a prescribed part of the, of deity worship of Archana, so it's not. It's a part of Archana. It's an integral part of Archana.
That is Swarupa Siddha.
Swarupa Siddha Bhakti, yes. Okay, so Sankarshan Nitai had question, but maybe Prangavinda, okay, short question and then we'll...
Short question, Maharaj. Just to clarify, Bhaktivinoda Thakur on Shikshastakam, beginning verse, he gave a commentary that when pure bhakti is performed, 4 results in the heart appears, and one of them is humility. Danya, daya. He gives like that sequence. But that's means automatically. Performer is with a pure consciousness, following Guru's instruction, then this byproduct, I would say, manifest, Danya. But then when Prabhupada was asked, what is the definition of Danya? He said, you have to do something bold. So it seems like a separate endeavor is emphasized by Prabhupada.
No. Prabhupada emphasizes the mood. When he says you have to do something bold, he basically says you have to really understand I am the servant of the Lord, like Hanuman, he has this boldness because he's the servant of the Lord and he knows I'm doing it for the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada explains Dainya in these terms because he tries to explain to us what is the internal mood. The mood is that I'm the servant of the Lord, therefore why should I be shy? I should be bold. If this is the boldness, if the boldness is the result of this, consciousness that I am the servant of the Lord, so that's what it is. That's Doinya. That's the separate manifestation. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for being a little over time. So,
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, next time, Saturday, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Maharaj ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Спасибо большое, Махарадж.
Hare Krishna.